If this doesn't light your fire.
Deadwise, Kelly, Schultz, and the whole bench empty. Both benches.
Hospital threw the gloves and started pounding on Claude Lemieux.
Wall thing. Dave the main event here, and will certainly have major penalties here.
It's Rock'em Sock'em Robots time. A spirited bout there.
Here they come, man. Here they come. It's a big, ugly brawl.
Matthew Waugh and Ian LePerriere. It's his birthday, so Lappy decides, I got to drop the gloves, and away they go.
And we have a war at the end of the game, and Chevrier is just getting murdered by Hextall.
At the start of their inaugural 1967-68 season, the Philadelphia Flyers played 3 road games, losing the first 2 and earning their first ever franchise victory in the third. On October 19, 1967, the Flyers played their first ever home game here at the Spectrum. Their opponent, the cross-state fellow NHL expansion team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. A crowd of 7,812 fans came out to witness this historic game. After 2 scoreless periods, Bill Sutherland put the Flyers ahead 1-0 with the first goal in Spectrum history. On the play, Sutherland pounced on a Rochefort rebound and buried the puck behind Penguins goalie Les Binkley from 10 feet out. Sutherland's goal would be the only one scored by either team. Flyers goaltender Doug Fouvel had 21 saves and went on to record the first shutout in both franchise and Spectrum history. 3 nights later, the Flyers would down the visiting California Golden Seals 5-2 to complete the team's first ever 3-game winning streak. I'm Steve Coates, and that's this date in Flyers history.
The legendary Keith Allen once said he noticed right from the very beginning of the Flyers' 1969 training camp that the best player on the ice was an unassuming 20-year-old rookie who'd just been selected in the second round of the NHL draft. That kid's name was Bobby Clarke. On October 22nd, 1969, Clarke played his 4th NHL game. On that night, most of the attention went to the Flyers' top-line center Andre Lacroix and goaltender Bernie Perron in a 4-3 victory over the Toronto Maple Leafs. But at 6:01 of the third period, Clarke set up a former Flin Flon teammate, Lou Morrison, for a go-ahead goal that put Philadelphia ahead 3-2. That assist was Clarke's first point in the National Hockey League. He'd go another couple of games before he hit his first NHL goal in a 3-3 tie at the Spectrum against the Rangers. Clarke went on to record a Flyers franchise record 1,210 career regular season points. I'm Tim Saunders, and that's this date in Flyers history.
Bobby Clarke was known as more of a playmaker than a goal scorer during his Hall of Fame career. As a matter of fact, he was known as one of the best playmakers in the league. He did not have an overpowering shot and primarily scored his goals through a quick release, hockey sense, and sheer hustle. Most of his 358 regular season and 42 playoff goals were gritty rather than pretty. Clarke's first career NHL goal was scored in the 7th game of his rookie season. On October 30th, 1969, the Flyers hosted the New York Rangers at the Spectrum. Hinting at his future reputation for scoring in the clutch, it was the 20-year-old rookie from Flin Flon, Manitoba, who scored with 3 minutes and 24 seconds left in the third period to forge the tie. It was Clarke's first NHL tally and the beginning of his storied career with the Flyers. I'm Keith Jones, and that's this date in Flyers history.
In the history of the Flyers franchise, there have been 7 players to score 300 or more regular season goals as a member of the team. Bill Barber, Tim Kerr, Bobby Clarke, John LeClair, Rick McLeish, Reggie Leach, and Brian Propp. On November 1st, 1987, Propp became the 5th member of the 300-goal club. Set up by Murray Craven, Propp scored a third-period goal against LA Kings goaltender Rolly Melanson in a 4-1 Flyers victory at the Spectrum. Propp celebrated with his signature hand gesture, the guffaw. Although Prop never nailed down an elusive 50-goal or 100-point season as a Flyer, he had 4 seasons with 40 or more goals and achieved 90 or more points 4 times, including a pair of 97-point campaigns. He finished his Flyers career with a total of 369 goals in 790 games. I'm Bill Clement, and that's this day in Flyers history.
Before there was the fictitious Rocky Balboa character, there was the 3-time Hart Trophy winner Bobby Clark, leading an underdog team to hockey's ultimate prize in back-to-back seasons. When Clark retired as a player after the 83-84 campaign, the team arranged a special night in his honor on November the 15th, 1984. Legendary Flyers broadcaster Gene Hart served as master of ceremonies. Among the tributes that poured in for Clark that night were the retirement of Clark's number 16, the unfurling of that banner, and the dedication of the Bobby Clark Trophy, which is now awarded every year to the Flyers MVP. But for those who were in the building that night, the most memorable part of the evening was the length and volume of the Spectrum crowd standing ovation. For over 4 minutes, Flyer fans applauded and screamed in unison. Bobby Clark was and always will be the enduring symbol of the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm Tim Saunders, and that was this date in Flyers history.
The Philadelphia Flyers enjoyed the best record in the National Hockey League during the first half of the 2005-06 season. And as is normally the case for the teams atop the NHL standings, the Flyers found many different ways to win. On October 27, 2005, the team found itself in a comeback mode throughout the night in a home game against the Florida Panthers. Trailing 3-1 in the second period, Simon Gagne scored to pull the orange and black within 1. Then after falling behind 4-2 in the third period, Gagne added his second goal of the night. With just 50 seconds left in regulation, Peter Forsberg, who assisted on both Gagne goals, scored his first goal as a Flyer and forced overtime. In overtime, defenseman Joni Pikkanen scored the game winner to complete the night of comebacks for the orange and black. I'm Steve Coates, and that's this day in Flyers history.
Few players in NHL history had the ability to score in bunches like Flyers power forward Tim Kerr. If not for miserable luck with injuries throughout his career, Kerr almost certainly would have joined the NHL's 500-goal club. As it was, he scored 370 goals and 674 points in just 655 career games. Kerr's second of 4 straight seasons with 54-plus goals came during the 1984-85 campaign. He got off to an absolutely torrid start, racking up 10 goals and 17 points in the first 9 games of the season. On October the 25th, 1984, Kerr punished the St. Louis Blues for 4 goals in a 7-2 blowout victory for the Flyers at the Spectrum. Already having 1 goal in the game in the first period, Kerr would score a natural hat trick, adding the Flyers' 5th, 6th, and 7th goals in a 2-minute and 27-second span in the third period. The win was the Flyers' 3rd in a row, giving them a 5-2-1 record to start the 1984-85 season under first-year head coach Mike Keenan. I'm Jim Jackson, and that's this date in Flyers history. The Flyers' top 2 forward lines feasted on the New York Islanders in a high-scoring 8-5 win at the Spectrum on November the 12th, 1992. The Crazy Eights line struck 5 times. Mark Recchi led the team offensively as he scored his 10th and 11th goals of the season and collected 4 assists for a 6-point game. The Monster Night tied a franchise record for most points in a game by a forward, while his parents, Mel and Ruth, were in attendance at the game. Rookie setter Eric Lindros collected 2 goals and an assist, and the third member of the Crazy Eights line, Brent Fettig, contributed a goal and 2 assists as well. In the meantime, Kevin Dineen compiled a Gordie Howe hat trick on a second-period fight with Jeff Norton, a third-period assist on Rod Brind'Amour's shorthanded goal, and a goal of his own that gave the Flyers a 7-4 lead. Stefan Beauregard was the winning goaltender as the Crazy Eights gave the Philadelphia crowd a night to remember. I'm Jim Jackson. That's this date in Flyers history.
Selected by the Flyers from the Canadiens with the 39th pick of the 1967 NHL expansion draft, French-Canadian forward Leon Rochefort was bound to make a mark right from the start. During the franchise's inaugural 1967-68 season, Leon led the Flyers in goals with 21 and ranked third in points with 42. On November 4th, 1967, Rochefort notched a permanent place in franchise history as the upstart Flyers notched a monumental 4-1 upset over the storied Canadiens at the Montreal Forum. Rochefort scored the first period power play goal and 2 even strength goals in the third period to record the first hat-trick in Flyers franchise history. The biggest star of the night, however, was Montreal native Bernie Parent. The 22-year-old Flyers goaltender turned back 33 of 34 shots. I'm Brian Boucher, and that's this date in Flyers history.
In one of the most lopsided games in franchise history, the defending Stanley Cup champion Flyers whipped the Kansas City Scouts by a 10-0 count at the Spectrum on December the 1st, 1974. Ross Lonsberry and Bill Barber scored 2 goals apiece, while Bobby Clark racked up a shorthanded goal and 2 assists. Billy also got goals by Gary Dornhofer, Bill Clement, Andre Moose DuPont, Horace Kinderchuk, and Dave the Hammer Schultz. Bernie Parent was scarcely tested, earning a 22-save shutout. The Flyers outshot the Scouts 47-22 in the game. And they led 5-0 after the first period, 9-0 at the second intermission. The Scouts relocated from Kansas City to Denver in 1976. They became the Colorado Rockies. And in 1982, the Rockies moved to northern New Jersey, and they became the New Jersey Devils. I'm Jim Jackson, and that's this date in Flyers history.
On November 17, 1997, legendary Flyers broadcaster Gene Hart was enshrined into the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. To listen to Gene Hart was to gain an education.
You have just been witness to the greatest playoff comeback in Philadelphia Flyer history.
He had the rare gift of being able to make people want to listen to him, no matter the topic. Hart called listeners his friends, and even those who never met the man somehow felt he was indeed their friend.
Hi, my good friends, and welcome to our premiere edition of The Hart Gallery.
The Flyers were near and dear to the announcer. In total, Hart called more than 2,000 Flyers games. He called 5 Stanley Cup Finals, 5 NHL All-Star games, and 2 of the series pitting the NHL All-Stars against Soviet teams. Gene Hart battled a host of health problems in later life and passed away on July 14, 1999. The press box at the Wells Fargo Center is also named in Gene's honor. I'm Chris Tarian, and that was this date in Flyers history.
One of the most dramatic regular season finishes in Flyers history took place on December the 5th, 2002, when the team defeated the New York Rangers 3-2 in overtime on a penalty shot by Michael Handzus. Referee Kevin Pollack awarded Handzus a penalty shot after he was hooked on a partial breakaway after forcing a turnover near the Rangers' blue line. Moving in on a straight line on Rangers goaltender Dan Blackburn, Handzus suddenly cut to his right, pulled the puck to his backhand, and flipped it over Blackburn's pads. Occurring several years before the NHL adopted the shootout in 2005, Handzus' goal was the first in franchise history to directly conclude a game under penalty shot conditions. In fact, he was only the second player in NHL history to accomplish the feat. I'm Tim Saunders, and that was this date in Flyers history.
In a 5-2 win over the Boston Bruins at the Spectrum on December 8, 1987, Ron Hextall carved out a special place in NHL history. He became the first goaltender to score a goal by shooting the puck into the opposing net. Hextall was not the first NHL goaltender who was an adept puck handler, and not the first who was willing to venture far out of his crease to play the puck. But he took it to a whole different level, both with his skill and aggressiveness. On his history-making goal against the Bruins, Hextall corralled the puck near his own net, saw a clear lane up the middle, and fired a dart that went straight down the ice and into the center of the vacated net. Hextall later became the first NHL goaltender to score a goal in a playoff game, accomplishing that feat in Game 5 of the Flyers' 1989 first-round playoff series with the Washington Capitals. I'm Chris Terrian, and that was this date in Flyers history.
Defenseman Tom Blayden was never a player who sought out the spotlight, despite being an offensively minded member of the Broad Street Bullies Blue Line. But on December the 11th, 1977, Blayden could not avoid being the center of attention. That night, he set a franchise record by notching 8 points with 4 goals, 4 assists in an 11-1 rout of the Cleveland Barons at the Spectrum. At 17:54 of the first period, Blayden scored to make it 2-0. 19 seconds later, he assisted on Don Selesky's 18th goal of the season. 27 seconds after that, Blayden picked up his 3rd point as he and Selesky assisted on a Mel Bridgman tally. After Rick McLeish opened a 5-0 lead in the second period, Blayden scored the next 2 Flyer goals to complete his first NHL hat-trick. At 2:47 of the third period, Blayden notched his 4th goal and 6th point of the game. He would go on to add 2 more assists after that, to total 8 for the game. Blayden's 8-point night is one of 14 in NHL regular season history, and the only one in a Flyers uniform. I'm Steve Coates, and that's this date in Flyers history.
Prior to the 1979-80 NHL season, the longest unbeaten streak in the Flyers' history was a 23-game run during the 1975-76 campaign. 4 seasons later, the Flyers not only shattered the previous franchise and league records, but they went on to set a North American pro sports record with a 35-game unbeaten streak. On December 22, 1979, the Flyers surpassed the Montreal Canadiens' 28-game NHL record with a 5-2 win over the Boston Bruins at Boston Garden. The victory gave the Flyers their 29th win or tie in a row. Following the win in Boston, Philly would rattle off 5 wins and 1 tie in its next 6 games to bring the unbeaten streak to 35 games. I'm Bill Clement, and that's this day in Flyers history.
The team that later came to be known as the Broad Street Bullies were not especially aggressive in their earlier years of existence. Through the first 15 games of their inaugural season, which was 67-68, the Philadelphia Flyers did not engage in a single full-blown fight. There are, of course, scrums and various confrontations along the way, but nothing that escalated to the point of actually deserving a fighting major. That changed on November the 19th, 1967, when the Flyers hosted the St. Louis Blues at the Spectrum. In a harbinger of many fierce battles to come between the soon-to-be arch-rivals, a multiplayer fight erupted immediately after the final horn, consisting of Pat Hannigan and Larry Zeidel from the Flyers side, and Gordy Kanigieser and Noel Picard from St. Louis. The Spectrum crowds would rise to their feet for more hard-hitting altercations over the years. Some of the best fights in NHL history took place on Spectrum ice. But it all started November 19th, 1967. I'm Steve Coates, and that's this date in Flyers history.